You are watching Fuel Motivation. For more videos from your favorite public speakers, be sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications.
You realize how much you try to block it out. You realize how much of your life you just shove under a rug and you just live on top of that rug until you pull that rug out and you fall into this fucking pile of shit. And then when you're in this pile of shit that we literally carry around with us all day long, but we just put it way back here. But we're carrying this big fucking rucksack, this big backpack of shit every day. But we think we're not.
Right.
We think we're not. We think, oh, we're good. I'm good. So when I had to go back in that shit, what was hard about it was trying to find power. Trying to find power in filth. Trying to take all this negative shit and say, all right, how the fuck am I going to use all this shit to propel me forward? That's the hardest part about it, because all you want to do is lay in it and just say, God, man, like, just let me die in this shit. So as you're going back to it, it almost makes you say, how the fuck did I get here? So then I went back to it, and I went back to it way before this book, because you have to go back to it before you go forward. You know, we all want to start now. I'm 44. I'm not going to go backwards. I want to go forwards. So that's not how it works. It's not how it works. Not the way I do unless you process it. You go back 1,000,000 times. You battle it. You overcome it. Even though it's gone, you got to go back in your mind and face it and overcome it. With my father, when I was 22, I believe I was, 22, 23, I had to go back and face him. Actually face him one-on-one. And that's really when I realized I had to go back to the, like if your knee hurts. A lot of people focus on your knee. It may be your fucking, if it's your left knee, it might be your right hip. We never focus on the hip, focus on the knee. So for me, I was focusing on all this surface shit. So when I went to the Air Force, I quit in training because I learned how to read, I learned how to write, I learned how to swim. But the second something hard came up, I went right back to where I always go. And I'm like, God, man, I thought I fixed all this shit. No, my left knee was hurting. And I worked on my left knee. It stopped hurting. But my fucking right hip was the fucking problem. So my right hip was my dad. Right? The crux of my problems wasn't anything to do with everything in life. It was to do with my father. Because that's where it started. It started there. The origin of the story, it started there. So I went back to the start point and had to face where all this happened, where the mindset started. The mindset of, all this shit, being beat for no reason and feeling like you're nothing and feeling like you got to lie to gain friends. And, my mind was developed, but it wasn't developing properly in that hell. You can't develop a mind in the hell I lived in. So what happened was people blamed me back in the day. My God, you lied about this and you did that. Let me put your fucking ass in that shit. Go, be born in that shit, man. Let me see how you come out. Let me see how secure in your foundation you are. So you learn to survive, but surviving doesn't make you win. Surviving makes you a fucking cockroach. It makes you just do that, survive. It makes you lie. How can I get through this? How can I get around this? Versus being a man and standing up for what you believe in. You're a coward. So you lie and you manipulate. But that's what those foundations, a lot of people are beat mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. So it makes you a coward. But then people blame you for how you act when you're 30 fucking years old. They don't know where you come from. They don't know the hell you had to endure, why your mind is the way it is now. So you have to go back and fix that shit. You got to go back to where the shit came from. You're not going to fix it now. You got to go back and fix it. So when I went back there, I realized this fucking guy, I had to look at my dad and forgive him without saying sorry. No one said sorry. I had to go back and say, why were you so fucking nuts? And realize, oh, you never went back. Right? You never fucking went back. And whatever fucked you up while you beat the shit out of my mom, me, and my brother, You never went back, so you took all that shit out on us. And therefore, that's how the generational shit goes on. My dad was an alcoholic. That's how that shit goes on. No one stops it. I stopped it. So that's what that caused me to do.
You can tell, if you have a memory that's more than 18 months old, approximately, and when you pull that memory up to mind, if you still have an emotional reaction, that means you haven't fully articulated the memory. You haven't analyzed it causally. You haven't freed yourself from its grasp, and you're carrying it like a weight. And your brain responds to that. Like the more weight you're carrying like that, more baggage, let's say, the more of the stress hormone cortisol your brain produces. And cortisol makes you old. Some of this work has been done by James Pennebaker at the University of Texas at Austin, because he started to pioneer these sorts of writing programs. And he found that if people wrote about uncertain things, past, present, or future, so they could be traumatic things, they could be uncertain things, that their physical health improved. And he did a lot of detailed research trying to figure out why that was, and basically came down to the explanation that it was something like an uncertainty reduction mechanism at work. Because your brain is always figuring out how well situated are you in the world. How much do you not know compared to how much have you mastered? And you can tell that you've mastered things because when you go somewhere and you act, things turn out the way you want them. That's an indication of mastery. And your brain is sort of keeping track across your whole life of how many places you've been where things haven't worked out compared to how many places you have been where they have worked out. And if all those places in your past where things haven't worked out, you need to map and master. And that decreases the existential load on you, but that actually decreases your psychophysiological load. It makes you healthier. It makes you less stressed. And so we put all that together in this self-authoring suite to help people write about their past, to sort it out in a detailed autobiography. It asks you questions about your past. It says, divide your life up into 6 epochs. And then divide each of those, that might be, say, birth to kindergarten, and then maybe elementary school, and then maybe junior high school, however you want to do it. And then to write about the emotionally significant events in each of those epochs, and then to describe their effects on you, and then to analyze how you did in those situations, what you might have done differently, what you might do differently in the future, to straighten out your past. And I've done that with my students in my Maps of Meaning class for about the last 10 years, and some people have written 15,000 words. It's not that uncommon for students to write 15,000 words in their autobiography. Well, if you're thinking about your past, what it means is you haven't analyzed the causal chains. Because you might say, well, why do you remember your past? Well, you might say, well, it's in order to have an objective, record of the past. It's like it has nothing to do with that. There's only one reason you remember the past. And that's to be prepared for the future. That's why you remember the past. And so what you're supposed to do is take the past and extract out from it wisdom. And wisdom is the ability to avoid stumbling blindly into ditches. And so you think, well, here's a time in my past I stumbled blindly into this horrible ditch and terrible things happened to me. It's like, okay, you need to take that apart. You need to figure out how was it that events conspired with your participation, voluntarily or involuntarily, so that terrible consequence emerged. You need to know why that happened and how you could react differently in that situation. And as soon as you do that, your brain will leave it alone. It won't obsess you about it anymore, because the anxiety-producing parts of your brain are basically trying to tell you where there are obstacles in your environment. It's like, look out, don't go there, don't go there. It's like, well, don't go there, there's fire. Well, maybe you could master the fire, right? Then you're a wielder of fire, you're not just a victim. And lots of situations are dangerous or not dangerous depending on your level of mastery, right? I mean, life is like that. And so a negative emotion that's associated with a memory is something that's crying out for mastery, and writing can really help with that. So you're reorganizing your brain when you write autobiographically. You're basically, the emotions, imagine emotion, memories can be stored at different levels of your brain, some from sort of primordial reptilian image-laden areas that are very emotional, up to finely articulated plans for your future life. Well, you want to take everything that's negative and emotional and transform that into a fully articulated vision for your future. And that frees you of your past.